Hi, this is Raj from MR Sportscars. In this video I'm going to compare and contrast two very, very popular models at the moment, and that is the 997 Gen 2 Cabriolet and Coupe. Now these cars are very different, not just from the body but also the options in them, so I'm going to run through some of those optional differences. You can view the videos of each of these cars, the walkarounds, to see everything in detail, but I'm going to just go through some of the highlights before driving both on my favourite B road to talk through how they feel behind the wheel. So first of all, as you can see, let me just grab the camera off the stand. As you can see, this one's finished in lovely basalt black metallic. This one is Arctic silver. Now interestingly, there's actually, even though they look very similar, there is quite a few years between these cars. So that car was produced in 2008. So it's actually an August 08. So it's an 08 plate 997 Gen 2. It would have been one of the first in the country, one of the first produced actually for production. So it would have sat in the dealership to sell the 997 to new owners. This is this basalt black C2S. It's produced in October 2010. So this is a 2011 model year. This is a 2009 model year. So yeah, just over 2 years in total in terms of when they were actually produced, but they've got the same body style. Remarkably very similar condition, both absolutely beautiful condition. This one's done just over 40,000 miles. The Coupe has done a few more, just under 60,000 miles, but it's the options first of all I wanted to highlight, because it just shows you the difference you can make by speccing different things from the factory and also retrofitting stuff as well. So looking at the badges, this is a 3.6 Carrera. It's rear wheel drive, 340 horsepower I believe. This is a C2S, so this is the S model with 3.8, still rear wheel drive, but just under 385 horsepower, so there's about 45 horsepower more, say 50 between the two. Very different wheels as well. That's got the optional 19-inch Carrera Classics with those lovely PCCBs, as I said, so those beautiful ceramic discs and pads, and they are unchanged from the factory. It's obviously had brake fluid change, but it's never had a pad change or disc change. 60,000 miles on the road, they're barely worn at all, because that's the beauty of PCCBs. They just last and last and last. This has got the 19-inch turbo 2 wheels, and they're diamond cut with the guards red calipers, which were standard on all S models unless you spec'd an optional colour. And the brakes are also the slightly larger, more robust brake setup compared to a standard Carrera. They have slightly smaller, thinner discs, and they have sort of satin black brake calipers unless they're upgraded to something like that. The big difference obviously is the shape of them. They have all the same lights, same bodywork, apart from the whole roof structure obviously. This has got the standard exhaust system. This has got the uprated PSE Porsche Sports exhaust, which was actually retrofitted by, I think it was Porsche Tunbridge, for the second from last owner. I've sold this car 3 times, so I know all the owners and all the work they've done. Plus I've got history going back beyond that as well in the files of these cars. The roof makes a huge difference to how it feels. There are some slight differences in terms of how that roof structure and everything makes it maybe more usable than the Coupe and slightly less usable for other reasons. So first of all it's much easier to get things in and out. It's easier for taller people to sit in there, particularly with the roof down. Well, actually with the roof down. With the roof up, it's a bit more restricted in its head height, and I'll go through that in the spec quickly. But the other thing you'll notice is the angle of the seat backs is very steep. It's pretty much vertical. Whereas if I show you the Coupe, same spec interior, but you can see that there's the the angle of those seats is more, I'd say, sort of like, imagine if it was at 0 degrees in the convertible, this is at around 5 degrees. So there's a slight recline, which makes it a little bit more comfortable. Also notice that most of the cars from the factory didn't come with a cushion there. You just had the top here, which you can lower. And this car's got Bose actually, so that has a subwoofer there. And then it has the seat bases, which again, you can pull off. They're just Velcro. And obviously the seat belts. Now the convertible, this one in particular, I've had some without this, but it has these extra cushions here, which does make it more comfortable in the back. I'm not sure if these were retrofit in later cars, because a lot of the earlier cars don't seem to have them, or whether they've been retrofitted. The seats still fold down, but obviously if you had Bose spec'd in this car, then the subwoofer would actually not sit there, it would actually sit in that section there, in the floor, in the footwell. Now I could go through some of the other options. This has got optional silver belts, whereas the other one's just got standard belts. It's got embossed headrests on the same seats, so you could spec them like that. The black leather was extended and it's got silver stitching, same as the other one there. The steering wheels are different. This is a PDK, so this is a 7-speed PDK, so it's a fully automatic or fully manual, or a combination of the two, and it's got the sort of like desired steering wheel, the sport design steering wheel there, which actually came from the factory. It's got heated seats, it's got sport chrono as well, so the dashboard mounted stopwatch. So there we go. Full climate control system, both of them have. They both have the optional heated seats as well. This car's got the NM Automotive system, which I think, yeah, you just press info. I'd said on another video you have to press source and info, but it's just info, and then it will go to the CarPlay system, and then you press info again to switch back. So that's a really nice retrofitted system that brings up the technology on this car to modern without changing the head unit. So it actually is identical in terms of the head unit to the Coupe, but it's got all that extra functionality in there. So because it has sport chrono, you get it light up on the steering wheel, on this sport design steering wheel. They both have the same headlight design. The front boots are actually the same as well, except this one has the optional wind deflector, which folds out and goes across the back. You can see it all set up there. It folds out and prevents buffeting when you're going at speed. But this whole area is the same, unless you have a four-wheel drive coupe or convertible, the boot size is the same. In the four-wheel drives, it is slightly smaller to make way for the front wheel transmission, the front wheel drivetrain setup, but that's exactly the same as the other one, except obviously it doesn't have the need for a wind deflector in the front. As I said, the headlights are the same. The bumpers are slightly different because this was optioned with the Hot Country, Super Hot Country, so it has a third radiator in the middle there, whereas this one has that area blanked out because it doesn't have that third radiator. That was a bit hit and miss whether you got one of those. It wasn't specific to just PDK. Some PDKs don't have it. I've seen some manuals with it as well, so it's all dependent on what was going on the factory line at the time. I don't think you could individually spec it in the UK. The 6-speed gearbox is absolutely sensational in that it is quite rare. It's quite rare to get a manual in these cars, but also it increases the level of driver involvement at all times because you obviously have the clutch to work with as well. But as you can see, the seats are the same silver stitching. The dials in a Carrera are black rather than silver, as you saw in the C2S. This car's got the switchable sports exhaust, and it was spec'd with PASM. So PASM isn't something that comes as standard on 3.6 Carreras. You have to option it up, otherwise the car will sit 10mm lower. Otherwise, the car sits 10 mil higher than this car does. So this is exactly the same height and suspension setup as the C2S there, but it was optioned, whereas with the C2S, it came as standard with that car. Daylight running lights on both as well. And you've got the same engine bay, just with obviously a slightly bigger engine in this one. Both have the parking systems, but I'll just go through the spec quickly because I've got it open here. So all of the dimensions are the same. The one thing that changed is obviously the weight. So the weight on the convertible is 1,540 kilos, whereas on the coupe it's 1,415. So it's about 100, it's just over 100 kilos lighter. And that's another reason actually why you don't see, some people say, why didn't Porsche develop a metal folding roof when they brought these out? Why did it have a fabric roof? And there's two reasons. One is where the roof mechanism is, there is an engine right underneath, which is obvious because it's a rear engine car. The other reason, and actually probably more important for Porsche, was the ethos of this car. So all of their sports cars have to handle like a sports car, and having as minimal weight as possible high up was crucial. So that's why you find things like, sometimes it seems a bit silly that they've got all of their control modules and everything under the seats, the Bose amplifiers under the seats. But actually there's a very important role that plays, and that is weight distribution. So you've got everything as low as possible, so it means that there's less body roll, there's less negative handling traits to having that weight in the car in the first place. So they put everything as low as possible. And it's the same with the roof. So obviously a fabric roof weighs a lot less than a folding metal roof mechanism of something like a Mercedes SLK of the era, or something like that. So this is a lot lighter mechanism, not just the mechanism, but also the materials used. That fabric hood, whilst it might be slightly compromised in terms of it needs more care than a metal roof, it means that the weight is placed as low as possible. And you can see I just controlled that with the keys. So the keys are slightly different, coupe versus Cabriolet. So there's the Cabriolet one, there's the coupe. You've got an extra button on the Cabriolet for remotely controlling that roof mechanism, and that is something that's available in the UK. I'm not sure whether it's available in the US from the factory. I think you can possibly have it programmed up to have that work, but in the UK it came as standard. It wasn't a safety issue to put that in. So now I'm going to drive both cars and talk you through how they feel. Okay, so I'm in the 911 Carrera 2S Cabriolet to start with, which has got the 7-speed automatic. Obviously the roof is down, so it looks absolutely brilliant. The weather looks a bit iffy. It looks a bit like it's going to rain at the moment. Now hopefully you can hear me. I'm wearing a microphone which is hopefully getting rid of most of the wind noise. But apologies if there is a bit of buffeting through the sound. Now the 2S, as I said, has around 45 horsepower more than the Carrera 3.6. At 3.8, it has a little bit more power throughout the rev range, and it's obviously torqueier as well. Both are absolutely sensational power-wise. There's no sort of feeling that the cars are underpowered. In either case, this car obviously weighs just over 100 kilos more, having all of that roof mechanism in there rather than a simpler metal shell roof. But there's no scuttle shake through the steering. The car has been properly engineered to be a sports car and handle like a sports car despite losing its roof. It has got reinforcing in the lower sections to strengthen the chassis, as you find with most convertibles, because they need that structural rigidity somewhere and they have to put it in, and that's another reason why the weight is slightly more. I'm taking this single track lane because we've got some traffic lights in the area, which this lane allows me to skip through. It's a lovely little hamlet called Driver's End, which I'm driving through. Sort of, you wouldn't know it's there unless you're from the area. It's right near Nebworth Park, just out the back of there. But as long as you don't come across anyone, it's actually a lovely little drive through here. So I mean, this is such a beautiful setup. So the 7-speed PDK works absolutely perfectly in auto mode, but if you want a more spirited drive, you can put it in full manual, slide it across, so it won't change gear for you unless you're pulling up at a junction. It will shift down if you're in like 5th and you forget to shift down. You can put it in sport, or in this case Sport Plus, because it has the stopwatch, so it has the Sport Chrono Package Plus system, so it comes with that extra button, Sport Plus, and really have super fast gear changes. And then in auto, it will hold gears for longer when you're speeding up, and also it will change down more aggressively as you're slowing down as well. I'm just joining my favourite B road, which is the B656 between Hitchin and Codicut. The car immediately detects when you want to push on, so if you're more aggressive on the accelerator or the brake, the PDK system, even in its normal standard mode, will become more aggressive and change gear quicker. It will be in the right rev range for more of the time. But it's super comfy in here, even with the roof down, without the wind deflector. I should have probably fitted the wind deflector for the sound in this video, but with the roof down, it sounds brilliant. You hear the engine, you've got the beautiful view of the trees and anything else. The scenery wraps around you as you're driving, so you feel much more a part of your environment. And I'm doing just 50 here, following another car. It's perfectly comfortable. It's not particularly warm today, it's 13 degrees, but I don't feel cold, so I've got the heated seats. This car's also got that CarPlay system, the NM Automotive one, which works fantastically at bringing everything up to date. I've got Waze open there, so if any other driver alerts me to potholes up ahead, or police hiding, or a broken down vehicle on the road, or some sort of object, that all gets relayed to this system with Waze loaded. So I definitely recommend getting the CarPlay system if you're going to get one of these and you want to use it. But I mean, the way it handles, as I said, you don't get vibration through the steering wheel any more than you would do the Coupe. It doesn't feel particularly compromised as a result of having that roof system. And when you put the roof up, it cocoons you. It feels much more like the Coupe, because it is a double skinned roof, so you don't have that compromise of lots of noise through the cabin with the roof up. I'm not going to put the roof up because I've got my camera mounted on one of the windows and it will want to drop that window to put the roof up, but you can put the roof up at just over 30 miles an hour on the move. Up and down it will go. You just need to use the controls in the center transmission tunnel here, and then you've got the best of both worlds. You can carry on driving, not have to pull over if it starts raining, And the heated seats are a must-have, I'd say, in the convertibles. In the coupe, you can definitely live without it, but in the convertible, it really makes a difference to driving in the UK. With the roof down, you'll be more inclined to do that with that. And another option you can get, not with this steering wheel, but you could get a heated steering wheel as well, which was only available with what's called the multi-function steering wheel. So that's the other thing I would look to maybe look at getting if you wanted to use it all the way through winter, is get that multi-function steering wheel, and then you'll be able to really enjoy having nice warm hands without the need to wear gloves. Performance is fantastic, just over 4 seconds 0 to 60, so a very, very quick sports car. And the sound is just glorious. I mean, the normally aspirated flat sixes are renowned for how they sound. That thrum, that boxer thrum, is just so smooth and unmistakable that it keeps the values of these normally aspirated cars strong, I think, and also the styling as well. So the 997 Gen 2 is styled much more along the lines of the classic 911s, so particularly the 993. I say this quite a lot in my videos, but for me the 997 Gen 2 is the water-cooled, slightly modern equivalent of the air-cooled 993 series. Obviously the dimensions have got bigger, but that same overall shape and feel is there. It feels more old school, just like the 993 obviously is, but it's reliable. So you've got that ability to drive it all year round, not worry about corrosion, not worry about spending money unexpected high amounts on engine work and that kind of thing. These cars are much more bulletproof, and I think the best of both worlds. You feel like you're driving more of a classic Porsche just by the sound and the styling, but it still has that modern feel, so you don't feel worried about getting out the garage. Is it going to start? Is it going to run? Even when it gets hot, they just start on the button, provided they've had all the nice servicing along the way and any sort of like recommissioning of suspension parts, and you can keep these working relatively cheaply as long as you use a Porsche Specialist. But yeah, this is a fantastic car. I think if you can take the extra time that it takes to sort of care for a fabric roof, there's not a better place. Regardless of the transmission, regardless of the engine, a 3.6 Carrera Cabriolet is a fantastic place to be. Likewise, the 4S or the GTS as well. All the convertibles are great cars. You're not compromised in how they drive on the road. The dynamic ability is still there. It doesn't feel like it's a slouch in terms of handling. Doesn't roll any more than the coupe, in my opinion, and the ride is just sublime. They're built to last. They're built to be enjoyed. So I'm now going to jump in the 3.6 manual and compare the two. Okay, I'm in my second 997 Gen 2 drive of the day, which is just an epic thing to say, that I get to drive these amazing sort of modern classics so much and share my experiences with you. I absolutely love helping people see just how special these cars, and explain why as well. That's the crucial thing. You might see them online and say, I don't understand how they hold their value so well, or why people love owning these cars. And it's not just about how they drive, which is fabulously, it's about how they make you feel. It's the essence of the idea of owning a 911, a Porsche 911, particularly a classic one. I think they hark back to an era where we weren't overruled by masses of safety aids, dictated about emissions to such a degree. Yes, these are designed to, I think these are Euro 4 or 5, probably Euro 5, in how they were developed to meet the criteria of being able to be sold in this case the EU, or built in the EU. But yeah, the way that these cars make you feel, even when they're standing still on your driveway in your garage, is pretty epic. So I'm driving down another different lane to get to my favourite B road. This one actually, the perimeter of it is partially on Nebworth Park. This one seems a little bit busier than the driver's end route, but it's still not too bad. Now, immediately jumping from the Auto, the convertible, into this coupe, I feel, obviously with the roof up, I feel more cocooned, but then the Cabriolet will also feel that same way if I'd have had the roof up on that drive. But there's just a slight extra level of feeling of safety and solidity in this coupe versus that Cabriolet. I mean, that's kind of obvious when you switch between the two, but I just thought I'd mention that you do feel that immediately. This car is the manual. The manual's a funny thing, because when they were new, a lot of people were talked into spending the 2 to 3k to upgrade to the 7-speed PDK, which is an absolutely phenomenal box. Very low maintenance, very easy to drive. It's very sporty as well, just like the manual is, but in a different way. It feels more like a race car type gearbox. This gives you an added level of involvement in the car, which I mentioned while they were static next to each other. Using the clutch, balancing the throttle with the clutch, sort of interacts with another part of your brain where you have to focus that ever so slightly more, or quite a bit more actually, to drive this car effectively at speed, and also actually at low speed in traffic. So I would say that level of involvement that people look for and crave in a weekend fun car, they want to immerse themselves in the drive, and the coupe manuals are the cars that people seem to want to do that in. That is the go-to ideal, what would I have in my garage? But actually, there's so few of these cars around, particularly cars for sale. I think the people who have these cars are holding on to them. So the market's very distorted towards having sort of like 90-95% autos. I think probably the split actually in terms of sales was probably 80-20, but more of the people wouldn't sell the manuals versus the autos. So you do find that the cars that are advertised are skewed towards the autos, which isn't a bad thing. But I would say now that they're getting to this age where they're a little bit older, they are a classic, modern classic sports car now. You might just have to find a sort of an 80% their car, so a car that ticks most of your boxes, but particularly I would prioritize condition, provenance over does it have this button, does it have the manual gearbox. I would rather get a really nice 7-speed PDK in coupe or manual, in coupe or Cabriolet, rather than a really leggy abused manual gearbox car, because you'll end up spending so much more money on aesthetics, potentially on mechanical work, as a result of getting a very tired car compared to a really nice condition PDK. And you know what, when you're in, you can enjoy it in a slightly different way. They are incredibly involving, and yet they allow you to also have a very relaxed drive as well. So that's the one thing I would say, is I wouldn't pick one over the other. I would say in an ideal world, for most people, for a weekend car, they would want one of these with a manual gearbox, rear-wheel drive. But likewise, a PDK 4S wide body, four-wheel drive, is equally amazing to drive and own. So that's where what I'd say generally about these cars is, just buy one that's really nice and you won't regret it. And then in terms of going to this car, you do feel more involved. It isn't quite as fast. I think it's 0 to 60 in around 4.5 seconds instead of like 4.2, let's say. So 0.2, 0.3 seconds different in terms of overall acceleration, but it doesn't feel by any means like a slouch, like a car that doesn't have enough power. It feels very responsive. The 3.6 is also, even though they don't have the same level of torque, the lighter masses of this engine and that slightly smaller displacement means I think it feels more responsive than the 3.8, which isn't really a surprise. They do say that will be the case. When you have a smaller engine, it will fire up quicker, it will respond to your inputs quicker. The sound is about the same. And in terms of the comparing a coupe to convertible, there's lots of different options you can get. You can get fully electric seats, you can have heated seats or non-heated seats, you can have different steering wheels. So it really is down to the individual car that you have. You can have a car with PASM or without. These two cars have the same suspension system with PASM, so they handle very, very similarly. And likewise, you can have different size wheels as well. I think they went as small as possibly 17s. I do know that standard these came with 18s. Actually, I think 18s is probably the smallest, and the largest was the 19s. So they can handle very differently. You can also have different width wheels as well. So the Carrera Sports are 1/2 inch wider, and have as a result, they have a different offset. So they sit in they actually feel the arches a bit better in terms of lining up with the vertical line of the car and the wheel arches. But it's so subjective, down to tyres and age of tyres, and down to when was the suspension last refreshed, when were the top mounts done, when were the lower arms done. All of that stuff plays a part. You can even have different suspension. You can have the Porsche based, you can have the Bilstein non-Porsche labeled suspension, and then you can have KWs, you can have different springs. So you can basically tailor these cars to however you want them to feel, and that's coupe, convertible, either. But what really makes these cars shine is that no matter which model you choose, Porsche have engineered and designed them to be epic. And that's where I'm going to leave it. I think it's all down to personal preference, but I would say the crucial thing is just getting a really nice example and just focus on getting the right car in terms of how it's been looked after, current condition, and also its history, rather than worrying about does it have all of the options you possibly wanted, because a lot of them you can retrofit now, and I've done other videos around that, retrofitting options, changing seatbelt colours, even, as I said, changing suspension setups. But also you can retrofit sports chrono, you can retrofit sports exhaust, you can change the steering wheels, there's quite a lot you can do to a car if you get the right car. And that's where I'll leave it. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe to my channel and have a look at some of my other 997 Gen 2 content. Thank you for watching.